Peacemakers unite for a world beyond war. I'm Laurie, and I'm grateful to the Peace Foundation of Aotearoa and to the United Nations Association of New Zealand for supporting my peace mission, to the World Beyond War Conference in Toronto, Canada, and to the United Nations high-level plenary meeting on the total elimination of nuclear weapons at the UN in New York, September 2018. The major realization from both events is the importance and value of civil society peace work to stop the perpetuation of the culture of warfare and militarization of the world. The greatest threats facing humanity in the 21st century are unbridled violence and increasing weaponry and conventional warfare and nuclear weapons and ultimately nuclear annihilation. In order to protect humanity, we must recommit ourselves to work for a world beyond war. And it requires that we convince our governments and multinational corporations to stop preparing for institutionalized warfare, which is illegal under the UN Charter. World Beyond War is the organization at the cutting edge of international civil society opposed to warfare defense doctrines and the weapons industry. It is led by David Swanson, who dedicates his life to humanity and the abolition of the plague of warfare on the planet. He explains how we can do this in a global security system, an alternative to war. Let us define the warfare problem. Number one, the underlying issue is that governments maintain militarism with billions of taxpayer dollars for the weaponry and training men and women for war. Number two, they justify it by political defense ideologies based on hundreds of years of warfare between competing tribes and countries for wealth, power, domination, and control. And they propagate that model for the future. Is it right? Is it necessary? Number three, the military warfare culture depends on the mass production of armaments for profit, plus political consent for the policies. This is reinforced by the global entertainment industry, which indoctrinates our minds with a constant diet of crime, pornography, warfare, violence, programming. So what is the peace-fair solution? Number one, change the entrenched warfare thinking with peace education and peace culture that must be funded by government and private enterprise. Peace must become profitable. Two, political lobbying. Stop governments investing in weapons and militarization. Three, promote peacemaking foreign policy based on diplomacy and mediation and peacemaking alliances that unite civil society and governments to outlaw warfare. Four, support UN peacekeeping defense forces to protect civilians from violence in war-torn countries or terrorism and those suffering environmental disaster. Five, employ men and women in peace-building projects, delivery of humanitarian aid, training for economic sustainability, and a peace work industry that best serves social and ecological well-being. This is the creation of a peace economy, and it means redirecting military spending to meet human needs. Nuclear-free New Zealand, peacemaker nation, is well-placed to be a front-runner to reject warfare and militarism and develop these alternative services and peace policies. Universal values in the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights and the UN Charter provide the foundation, and we, the people who are determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. 194 UN member states agree to these principles and to allow all children to have food, water, sanitation, health care, education, and protection from violence and war. And that we know We can clean up the rivers and seas, replenish the soils, replant the trees, and reverse climate devastation through renewable, clean energy technologies. These are all part of the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Number 16 is peace, justice, and security. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, expands on this in his paper, Securing Our Common Future, an Agenda for Disarmament. He says disarmament is essential for survival of the human race. He says that we must dramatically reduce our conventional weaponry if we hope to reduce violence in society. The UN Treaty for Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is a major step forward for disarmament. 122 nations agreed on the 7th of July 2017 to proceed with the Nuclear Weapons Ban Treaty. 69 nations have signed it and 19 have ratified the treaty, including New Zealand. This has been driven by ICAN, the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, and hundreds of other non-government organizations working for peace. This commitment to abolition of nuclear weapons was reinforced at the International High-Level Plenary for the Elimination of Nuclear Weapons. Over 60 heads of state made speeches. One of them was by the Philippines Foreign Affairs Secretary, who said nuclear weapons are incompatible with peace, security, and the United Nations. Peru's Director of Multilateral and Global Affairs said, nuclear weapons present a crime against humanity, a violation of international and humanitarian law. Morocco's Minister of Foreign Affairs said, nuclear defense is a moral contradiction. Nuclear disarmament is the only way to greater global security. But we must move beyond nuclear disarmament to dismantle the whole warfare system and ideology. This year, 2018, we are honoring the war dead. Veteran soldiers said this was the war to end all wars because warfare is an abomination of our humanity. It is unacceptable to prepare for warfare like a sporting competition. It is barbarism and should be relegated to the annals of history. By the end of World War I and the nuclear bombing of Hiroshima, we knew that the government institution of warfare must end. In 1945, the UN was set up for this purpose, but we, the people, must continue the work for civil society and governments to abolish warfare in order for the UN to fulfill its mission. Warfare has gone on for centuries in recurring cycles of fear, hatred, revenge. However, we are not doomed to repeat the past in a future of war. We are intelligent beings and have freedom of choice. We have the power and the skills to redirect aggressive human behavior into positive, creative activities. We are global citizens who love life on Earth. Our collective human intelligence and strongest desire is for compassion, nonviolence, and peace to preside. These higher values must be cultivated and taught as mainstream thinking adopted by all countries, cultures, political parties, and multinational corporations. This requires employment for thousands of people to perform the whole spectrum of peace education, peace culture, peace social work in each community as well as on the international level. It's a real job and must be paid work. As Dr. Martin Luther King said, those who love peace must learn to organize themselves as effectively as those who love war. I am committed to working for a world beyond war. Please, will you join me in this peace work?